Well, folks, this is me playing with my stream. That doesn't sound right, does it? I'm just messing around with YouTube's live features, mainly because my wife says I should do some streaming of my modeling. So here I am. So we're going to start with some Workbench stuff, just whatever I happen to be working at the time. Now, today's post brought me my long-awaited resupply of LEDs, so I'm going to start with that. I do a lot of fitting of equipment with LED lighting. And I basically use four different LEDs. For most projects, like structures, and for most projects, general projects like structures, where I don't really care about how much room I have, I've got tons of room to fit it in, and there's no appearance requirement, I use the trusty 3mm dome top LED. Buy them on eBay, bag of 100, $10. For locomotives, if I've got lots of room, or if I want a lot of light, I want a little bit better form factor, I use 3mm flat top LEDs. Also, about $10 for 100 on eBay. I use the warm whites, by the way. They do a nice job of simulating an incandescent lamp. Now, for locomotives for smaller installations, I use two different ones. Both made by sold by Eve Model in the UK, out of the UK. Everest Model, I guess they're actually called. These are 0402 surface mount LEDs, 0402 SMD LEDs. And these are 0201s. You see them right there. So the 0402 and 0201 designations on surface mount LEDs refer to the dimensions of the LED in decimal millimeters. So an 0402 LED is 0.4 millimeters long and 0.2 millimeters wide. An 0201 LED, therefore, is 0.2 millimeters long and 0.1 millimeters wide. Very small. These are both sold on eBay by Everest Model. Eve Model is how you find them on eBay. They come in a pack with complimentary 1K resistors. The 0402s are about half the price of 0201s. Basically, the packages are the same price for 20 0402s or 10 0201s. I use 0402s as my kind of default small space headlight, but I use 0201s for really small spaces. That's what I'm doing right now. Ditch lights, especially, or any other small lighting houses. If you want to do classification lights on a steam saw, classification lights or something like that, they'd be good too. So this morning, I'm fitting up the ditch lights for a locomotive I'm working on. The locomotive itself will be subject for another stream. I'll leave you in suspense. A note about these LEDs, though. The way they come, these ones specifically have magnet wire leads pre-soldered. I find those very useful. The magnet wire is a single strand. You don't have to strip it. The act of soldering it will melt away the varnish on the wire, and that's very useful. The stripping very small PTFE insulation is very annoying. Some guys I know save a couple bucks by buying without the leads on them. I haven't got time to solder on it. Leads on an SMD LED. Oh, sorry, SMD, surface mount device. So what I'm working on right now is getting these prepped. So let me find my cross locks. This is miniatures by Eric ditch light, made by the late Eric Courtney. It's a brass ditch light for CN or CP locomotive. And you can see I've got it mounted on a little stick, a little bit of wire. And this casting is part L9. I believe it's an L10. I'm sorry. Okay, the L9s are the ones made to mount on a deck, and the L10s are made to mount in front of a locomotive directly, like on an F unit or FA. Spoiler. So what I've done is I've dressed that casting with a file, and I've bored a couple of holes in it. First one in the bottom to put a mounting pin on it, and the other goes right through the casting, and that's where the LED will mount. But since everything here is brass and the parts are bare, they're conductive. So I need to do some modification to make sure nothing shorts. Enter the electronics tech secret weapon, nail polish. You see, I bought it on sale at the beauty supply store. I just take a little bit of that. Color doesn't matter. I like this nice bright yellow because it's the easiest spot. So first I'm going to take my tweezers, and I'm going to make a 90-degree bend that leads right at the LED so that they go straight back from the housing in the envelope, because I'm going to want that envelope pointing forward. And then I'm going to put just a little bit of nail polish there. Nail polish is just a hard enamel, and it's an excellent insulator. And this is a great way to insulate very small parts. So I got that one done. I'll just put that on a clamp to keep it out of mischief while the polish dries. This, maybe I'll call this the chaotic modeling stream or something, because who knows what I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to do the other one too, because of course locomotives have two ditch lights. Sometimes you'll have ditch lights and rock lights. That's always interesting. But I don't model BC rail. Not yet, anyway. Considering I've been modeling CBNS for almost its entire existence. I recently started modeling Devco. I'm still not sure why, but here I am. Yeah, I'm just as annoying in video as I am in real life. Get over it. Yeah. So I'll let that set up a bit. Now I also could apply some nail polish to the hole. Sometimes I do it that way. In this case, the holes are very small. I'm worried the nail polish will plug the hole. That would not do. Pardon me while I drink my coffee. You may have seen this a minute ago. This is one of my more recent outshops. This is Cape Breton Development Corporation Railway S1, formerly the Sydney and Louisburg S1. This is an Atlas S1 switcher. I've done very little to it. I dressed it up a little bit. I put some better grabs on it, air hoses and stuff, such like, and I fitted it with a N scale decoder in the cab. It's just directional headlights. The flashlights are not illuminated, at least not yet. Maybe I'll get crazy and do that. In this instance, I just used I did use an 0402 in each end. There's an 0402 hiding behind this headlight casting, and there's no one hiding up here in the cab. So for something like that, it's really nice. The 0402s are nice. And I mentioned Devco modeling, so I guess we'll have a look at a Devco car. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I've been working on some more of my Devco hoppers lately. These hoppers are 5-bay rapid discharge cars, derived from the Ortner design that everybody and their dog currently uses. And Devco had a large number of these built in the 80s and 90s to replace their vast fleet of 2-bay and 3-bay hoppers that they've inherited. They had something like 500 or 600 of these cars with two different designs, and there are at least 4 different versions of their livery that appeared on them. I've got 2 of them in play here. These are both models of the Hawker Siddeley version of the car, built in Trenton, Nova Scotia. And they are modeled with 2 different versions of the livery. One with Cape Breton Development Corporation spelled out, one with Devco, which is the more commonly used name for the company. These were decaled using highball graphics set for Devco mining. And I recommend that set very highly. Jim Abbott did a great job on it. And it's made it possible now to do this type of kit bashing, and you have lettering to work with. So I'm just doing a little more on this car. This car is an 86 series car. These cars were numbered in accordance with the year they were built. So I model a period about 10 years after this car would have been built. This is 8623. So I'm just giving it a little more weathering. I've already done the cracks and crevices and relief parts of the model using Tamiya's excellent panel line accent wash. And now I'm just picking out the sharp edges with a Vallejo weathering pencil. This is Vallejo, AK Interactive weathering pencil. This is AK 10011 light rust. You heard me running through the pencil sharpener a second ago. And I just work it across the edges, any sharp edges I find on the ribs, just to get a little bit of a tinge of rust. I find this works very well. I think the pencils work better on a flat coated model, but for my purposes, they do work adequately well on this gloss coat. It saves me a step, saves me a coated finish on the car. If I was working with a flat finish car, it would definitely be fun to do it that way too. This car has been decaled and clear coated. But the clear coat, the gloss clear coat, was necessary for the pan line accent to flow properly into the corners. And the pan line accent in this case, I'm just applying it like a pin wash, is what I'm doing. Just letting it creep into the corners and crevices between the ribs and the sides, just to accent the shadows. And similarly here, I'm using the pencil just to pick out the highlights of the edges. Just those little spots where where things get just a little rusty and getting beat up. The edges of the gates too. See here, I'm working across the edges of the reinforcing strips on the gates. That's the kind of place that's going to get a little rusty. The ends are not going to get nearly as bad because the way the flood loaders work, they don't usually dump coal over the edges, over the ends. But the sides will get a little bit beat up, courtesy of the loaders and more the car shakers at the dump houses. So I'm just going to work my way around this car. I'm just doing light weather on these ones. I like to do some variety in my cars. I'm building dozens of these cars, so I have a couple of different paint mixes that I use. Partly because I'm not settled on what's the perfect paint mix for a new Devco car, and partly because I'm not certain there is such a thing. You know, paint tend to vary, even on the prototype. You get variation as well due to aging effects on the paint and what circumstances the car's been through. So it's okay to have, especially in large fleet cars, it's okay if the paint doesn't match every car. I've heard from authorities that, people that work, asked directly at CN shops, what's the correct color for a CN locomotive? What's the correct color red? And the guy answered by opening his desk drawer and pulling out 6 different samples from 6 different paint companies. So said, well, see, they don't use the same color, so we don't have to. I said, But the thing is, William Shakespeare made up the words when he made Hamlet. That doesn't mean you can make up any words you want. What it means is we have to follow the variations that they got. So, the fact that CN used, say, 6 different colors of red in their locomotives doesn't mean we can use any color we want. It means we have to identify and duplicate all 6 of those colors. Or at least one of them. So, and this sucks. This is modeling. I watch Boomer a lot. Boomer Diorama. That guy's awesome. He really has a outlook on the hobby that I admire. That, this is supposed to be fun. So remember that. Always remember that. If you're having fun, you're doing it right. If you're not having fun, maybe you're still doing it right if that's what you want to do. But don't let other people define how you enjoy your anything in your life. Pretty good advice for anybody, really. I didn't come here to be smart, but here I am, trying to be smart. I don't know if I'm succeeding. I'm trying. So we're just putting a little bit of color on this. Breaks it up a little bit. It's funny, these cars, they weathered quite a lot, like any car does, but they didn't really deteriorate. The paint stayed pretty good. I'm going to use dark rust for this car. This isn't like the yellow and the red the yellow and the green really didn't fall apart the way you might expect in coal service. And it's quite remarkable. I don't have an explanation for it. I really don't. But even today, like in the last 3 years, I took a trip up to Sydney to measure some of these cars on what's now the Sydney Coal Railway. And they're dirty and they're dilapidated. They've been repaired many times, but they're still green, they're still yellow, it still looks pretty good. It's remarkable how well this paint scheme lasted. They weren't notorious for spending extra money on things, but it seems like they spent money on good paint, or somebody did. Maybe they weren't looking and somebody decided to get better paint. I don't know. But they're a distinctive car. They always get attention at shows. Most of the time I'm running on my modules. My newest modules, which I'll show another time, maybe, will be depicting a wash plant. Unfortunately, I don't really have the space to model the mammoth wash plant they had at Victoria Junction. So I'm doing a model that's based loosely upon the older wash plant at Sydney Mines. But I had to fold it kind of to fit it in this space. And here we are. See, it's already starting to look good. Well, this one I've already done panel line wash down there, so I don't think we'll do it up above. But I do need to do that edge. And it looks like there's not much color transferring, and you're right. But this is a game of subtleties. This is an enterprise where subtlety counts. I'll tell a story. So I got asked to build a model for a museum recently, and they wanted it to match an existing model the museum has. I said, sure, no problem. The subject of the new model is still extant, so I can just go measure it, but I'm going to need to know the scale of the existing model, because the existing model is of an object that no longer exists. Oh, we don't know what scale it is. So, well, you've had it for all these years. It should be marked somewhere. I got a note back. No, it's not marked anywhere. Really? Well, I said, I'm going to have to figure that out, so I'm going to have to make arrangements to see it. So I go to see the existing model. And I walk into the room where it's displayed. I look at the plaque. Right there. Scale. Built by John Smith. Scale. 3/16 of an inch to 1 foot. Okay. I guess that was easy. People are funny. But hey, it wasn't a long drive. It was pleasant. Just kind of amusing. I worked a lot in technology, so it's kind of the same vein as driving 2 hours to turn a power switch on that 3 different people told you the phone was turned on. Yeah. If your expert is asking you a question, he probably has a good reason. And if you traveled 100 kilometers and you have a briefcase, you're an expert. One side's done. These weathering pencils are really great. This is the AK 10013 Dark Rust. I also sometimes just use, I've also got some artist pencils I just buy at the art store. They also work. You have to fidget around a little to get certain colors, but the AK and Vallejo pencil products do include colors that you might not necessarily find. I've got a raw umber, a burnt umber, I know for sure, and a raw and burnt sienna, I think, for the art store, and they work very well too. That's all these are. They're specialized. They're art pencils that are in very specific colors. A little glip there, something stuck to it. That's a nice little effect of rust though, so I don't mind. The big thing with modeling rust and dirt is you don't want it to look like a machine did it. Way back when, a couple of different model companies offered pre-weathered cars, and all they did was their paint department took these cars and ran them literally on a conveyor belt in front of an automated airbrush and spritzed them with some dark colored paint. Didn't really have a very good effect. It's like this mechanically straight band of rust color down the side of the car. You can see what they're trying to do, but they didn't do a very good job. But at least they tried. They experimented. They get full credit for experimenting. Just a few random spots here. That's good. All right. That's just about ready for airbrushing and clear coat. Let's see how my nails are doing. Yeah, it's dry. One reason they used acetone in nail polish, after all, is that it dries super quick. So the next thing I need to do is I need to paint the next things. Because once these go in, I'm done. I'm going to mask them, install them, and paint them with the rest of the locomotive. They'd be on the locomotive already, but number one, I need to be able to access the holes for the wiring. And number two, my LEDs only arrived this morning. I'm just going to agitate a little of the old Tamiya X11 chrome silver. And try and get it to open. We'll be like that, are we? Boy, that does not want to open. Vice grips it is. Sometimes it's your bottles get a little difficult to open. I don't use enough of any one, especially colors like chrome, silver, and flat aluminum. I don't use them very rapidly, so the bottle tops get a little gummy, which is mildly irksome, but part of the job. Could be worse. It's usually a matter of getting enough leverage. Okay, so put my cross-lock tweezers to work again. One. Tweezers are subject for another day. But one thing I will say is, find a good pair of cross-lock tweezers, any good pair of tweezers, frankly. Buy more than one pair if you can. I've got a couple good pairs of cross-locks. I use them quite a bit, so I have more than one pair. Most of my other tweezers are all different types, but I've got 2 sets of cross-locks. So what I'm doing here, I just want to make sure that I get the hole cleared so that the wire can be fed through later. So I applied the paint, just pop that little bubble so I don't paint the hole shut. Just a little chrome and silver for the reflector. I'll apply lenses later, but I want to make sure that there's no brass color showing around the light, because that's not going to look like it. That's going to look good. The correct thing to do is take that bottle right now and clean the threads. But that doesn't make very entertaining YouTube content. So here we are. We'll switch the brush out with some water. Give it a wipe. Water will clean up your acrylics pretty well, but I also like to apply afterwards. I like to use some paint over, in this case, Polyscale's Easy Lift Off, or ELO. I have a stash of it. I find that gets the last, especially with metallic colors, it gets the last traces out of the brush. It also seems to leave the brush in better shape than just water. So I keep some of that handy. Now, paint is still wet, but we can work with that, because the paint will help adhere the LED in place. So just thread the wires right through that hole I made. That's a number 78 hole drilled through the back, by the way. There's a corresponding hole in the front of the locomotive where the wires will go when I put it on. So the wires will go right behind the casting and right into the locomotive. And with any luck, they will be difficult to see. Well, in some installations, it's okay if the wires show. It depends. Like if you're doing rock lights and an effing, those wires were always visible. They went into a little hatch in the nose. Yeah. I'll do the other one. I have found that it's a lot easier to do the full install of the ditch lights before you paint, and then paint them with the locomotive. Just mask the lenses and the LEDs. I find that's a lot easier than trying to attach and then paint match around the glue or whatever you use after the model's been painted. Because the LED doesn't care. All that matters is it's straight, as in, perpendicular. So the light comes out of it. I'm going to turn this light off, speaking of, because now I'm going to test these LEDs. It's a good idea to test your LEDs frequently during installs, because sometimes these leads can be very delicate, and you can break them without knowing it. And it's very frustrating to have that happen when you're doing final assembly and you realize the lights don't work. That's always embarrassing. So set up my LED, my circuit tester for diodes. And a lot of people don't know that the digital multimeters have a setting for continuity, and that has a diode mode. What that's for is to test the voltage that a diode drops, but it will pass a small current through the diode to establish that, and it's enough to light the diode if it's an LED. So you can use that to test your LEDs. So there's the hot. And there's the return. Nothing happening there. Okay, maybe the wire's not stripped very well. That happens. Take a knife. Actually, let's take a torch. Oh, no, I'll take a knife. Take a knife and give it a little scrape. Sometimes the wire's still coated when it comes. Sometimes it's bare at the end. That one looks a little. That one didn't look bare. So we'll find out what happens. But this is the time to find out you get a bad LED. You can pull it out and pop a new one in, no problem. As opposed to having it buried in a finished locomotive. That's really annoying. There we go. There it is. It's hard to tell. It's hard to see on this. There it is. So that's lit right up. So that one's fine. It's also be shorting a little bit, I suppose. Let's double check that. Make sure it's not shorting. Because it could be shorting to the casting. That might be way to light immediately. Also just be my mini grabbers aren't grabbing very well. I think the latter is really the case. The mini grabber probes are not grabbing optimally. Yep, that's lighting up fine. It won't give you the full brightness, but it'll give you more than enough to tell that the light is good. I use a lot of it. I don't use bulbs for anything anymore. Because they're more fragile. I've never burned out a headlight without abusing it, but they can burn out over time, and they just don't look as good. So I'm already doing DCC wiring for everything, so the extra addition of a resistor is really no big deal. Resistors are cheap. When I do the installation, these come with 1K resistors, but that leaves a very, very bright light. I usually bring it down. For a headlight, I'll run usually as a single 4700 ohm or 3300 ohm, 3.3K or 4.7K resistor. And for a pair of ditch lights, I will usually use a single 3300. So that means that the headlight is getting twice as much current as the ditch light. And therefore it burns just a bit brighter. Because LEDs have a range of brightness as determined by the current flowing through them. So a 1K will give you full 20 milliamps through the LED, which is usually a lot more than you need. It's a very bright LED, bright effect. So that's where you can dial it down. So that's not working. This is why I test them. Just pop that out of there, see if it's the LED, or what it could be is it could be making contact with the brass. So let's take a quick look at that. Take that out. Just make sure these wires are stripped right. They sure look good. On the diode setting, make sure there's no stray insulation causing problems. Like I said, the insulation on these wires is basically a varnish. A heat-sensitive varnish. And when you solder the wires, that will melt away. The rosin will carry, the flux will carry away the varnish will melt and the flux will carry it away. And you'll end up with better wire. Makes it really easy to wire them. Seems like I might get it done here. Nope, it works now. Okay. So now I'll put it back in the casting and see what happens. This may be a matter of the casting is shorting it out. It does happen. But that happened a few times. The LED doesn't work, so I pull it out, re-insulate, put it back, works fine. Sometimes that's all you gotta do. So let's get this in here. So back to the model project for the museum. One thing about it is I was delighted to see it was done in 3/16 to 1 inch because that's 1/64. 1/64 is a standard modeling scale, which means I can buy parts like windows and doors and things. I was worried it was going to be a full scratch building job, and it was like, eesh. I don't mind scratch building houses. I'd rather not scratch build windows because I'm lazy. Mind you, I'm also cheap. Window door castings cost money. So let's just check this one. There's a red wire. Oh, yeah, that's red wire. Yep, that works now. So whatever was going on was no longer going on. So let's set that aside. So that's going to go on the locomotive shelf. We're just about at my time I had planned. I'll show you what they're for, though. This is a Proto 2000 FA2 shell and turned into an FPA4 for VIA. This is a collection that I bought, and it wasn't finished. Well, I guess I'll finish it. I don't need an FPA, quote unquote, need. I don't need an FPA4, but they're a neat locomotive, so I just need to do a work on finishing it before I re-prime it. A few blemishes in the primer, so I need to sand them out and redo it. But while I'm doing that, I'll put the ditch lights on. I primed it yesterday because I felt like doing it and realized I didn't have the headlights to put in. I said, oh, I'll put them separate. This morning's mail, there are the headlights, or the ditch lights anyway. So I'm just sanding out this little blemish I had. I don't know what happened. The hair got in it or something. It happens. I use Rattle Can to me a primer, so sometimes that needs a little spurt of the Rattle Can's. Excellent primer though. Beautiful stuff. I'm priming in white this time because VIA's scheme is, of course, bright blue and bright yellow. So I'm going to start with white primer. That'll save quite a bit of paint when I go to paint it. I almost just put a fingerprint. I think I touched it. I shouldn't have. Yeah, a little bit of sanding here with my trusty sanding stick. This is a 400 grit sanding stick. I'm going to flip it over to 600 when I've got that done. Get it smooth first. And smooth it out more with the 600 side. And that'll be ready for repriming. Coming soon to a layout near you. It's been pretty good, actually. There's quite a few mods to make it into an FPA4, but the result is the result is pleasing. I mean, sure, I could buy an FPA4, but I wouldn't have. This one kind of just happened to come with the stuff I wanted, so here we are. Anyway, that concludes my first stream. Hopefully I didn't chase too many people away, and maybe you'll learn something. So remember what the man said. Let's be careful out there.